I have a second channel, Cube Compium TDX. Hey everybody, welcome back to this series of videos on doing the hardware swap between this computer and that system in the floor over here. And if you haven't watched parts 1 and 2 of this series, I'll post cards up in the right corner. Feel free to go have a look at those videos. And also feel free to subscribe to QQ Channel and be sure to tick the bell that we get notified of new updates. And of course, here at QQ Channel, I do not waste your time talking about today's sponsor. So, here we are looking at this computer system. It is a socket AM3 motherboard. It's got an AMD FX 8120 CPU. So this particular motherboard, the 890FX II X4, happened to be one of the motherboards that would support the new, at the time, FX Live Zambezi CPUs with the BIOS flash. This motherboard, CPU, and that memory there are former mid-tower deluxe hardware. So the dilemma I ran into was I was going to use the AMD FX branded liquid cooling loop that was installed in this system. But this motherboard, the active VRM cooling, sticks up just a tad too high to where I could not mount the radiator into place. So at the end of the last video, I was thinking, oh, I'll just stick it out here and I could go and break into the system and kind of make it into a custom loop. But you know what? I was thinking, I have this radiator. I have, where is it? A water block right here for socket AM3. This was actually the block that came off of this board, the one I used to use in Mid-Tower Deluxe. It's a Heat Cure 3.0 LC. So all I needed was some tubing and a pump. So I picked up a new pump. It's around here somewhere. There it is. It is a Syscooling SC300T, which I think Syscooling, not sure that's the actual brand of the product, but I think the OEM may actually be the same manufacturer as the well-known SC600 pump that I talk about here on this channel, the water pump that's on the Mid-Tower Deluxe. So this little pump here, it has an integrated reservoir. It has plastic inlet and outlet barbs. Now this pump here was a little over 20 bucks, so not very expensive. So you're not going to get a super high-end pump with this. But it does give you a 3-pin connection for your motherboard. That way you can power it off your motherboard and monitor your pump speed, all that good stuff. And you can see on the bottom there, even got Syscooling branded on the bottom of this thing, which is pretty cool. So the only issue I have with this product is I'm a little skeptical of the long-term reliability of this bonding between this clear plastic reservoir and this black plastic pump. You can tell that they put this together and then they glued this on, but I'm going to actually fix that, and I'm going to actually include a card up in the upper right corner to a different video where I'm going to fix that. Okay, so this radiator here, this actually is the stock radiator from the Thermaltake Big Water 735 liquid cooling system kit from Thermaltake. The fan is not the original fan. The fan that was actually on this radiator originally was actually seized up. And I put this one on here. This fan here, I want to say this fan dates back from 1997 or 1998. It came out of a slot 1, I think it's slot 1 Xeon. It was definitely 2 slot processors like the Phenom IIs and the early Phenom IIIs. Dell server. It was a big thing. They had like 2 of these big fans in it, and I happened to get one. It was a scrap computer back in my days at Hopewell High School, and I was like, I had to have one of these because I mean it's a 120mm fan, but it's an absolute soldier of a fan. It's highly certain it's ball bearing. Pulls a little over 1/3 of an amp at full spin. And it's kind of noisy at full spin, but it can move the air. So that's kind of an important thing. So this radiator I want to say it dates from 2007. So being approximately 15 years old, the O-rings on the back of these compression fittings were all cracked up, and that's just not good. That's not something you want to, that's not something you can rely on. We'll just say it like that. So, I've taken one off, and I've changed out the O-rings. They are actually the number 6 O-rings at Lowe's, the Danco number 6. Seems to fit there perfectly fine. It's a little fatter, so I'm going to go ahead and crank this one back on there, and I'm going to change out the second one. Yeah, it's important on older components like this that you have good seals. Now the thing is with, like, for example, water blocks, you know, once that seal on the water block goes, I'm not really sure how you would handle that, because that's kind of a little different deal. But these O-rings you can change out, obviously. You can buy those at Lowe's or wherever. So I just want to go ahead and tighten this fitting back up. And this one happens to be a 3/4 socket. Give a good few turns there. Alright. That O-ring is good and flat now. So we'll go ahead and do this second one down here. So I'll show you. I'll pop this one off and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, the last time I used this radiator, it wasn't actually leaking, but this O-ring, I'll get you a good look at it. You can see how it's all cracked up. Can't trust that. Cannot trust that, so we're changing it. So a 10-pack of these O-rings is like $2 and change. May as well spend the $2 and get new O-rings rather than having your radiator leak. So we'll just take this fitting. So this is not sure what size this is. It's not G1/4. G1/4 is actually a little bigger. Let's get that on there. Just like that. So I slipped it over the threads. Now let's go ahead and crank it back into place. And tighten it down. Alright, good to go. Okay, so here's a look at the HeatCure 3.0 LC block. This was the water block I used in Mid-Tower Lux, and back in the day I tried to adapt it to socket AM4, but I didn't quite get the holes lined up perfectly, so yeah, that didn't quite work out. So that's when I ended up buying a new block when I upgraded Mid-Tower Lux back in late 2017. Yeah, the current block that's in the Mid-Tower Lux is a Raystorm Pro by XSPC, and I just bought these new G1/4 to I think 3/8 compression fittings off Amazon. Forget the exact price, but it wasn't a whole lot, and it was a pack of 4. Now I can say I would like to give it a 5 out of 5 for initial impressions, but when the fact is I had to, one of the fittings was missing an O-ring, so had to go buy O-rings. And these fittings, the G1/4, happened to take this number 8 O-ring. That was the closest fit I could find at Lowe's, and me show you what they look like. And I'll be saving these for future use. I do kind of like these more than barb fittings. Just my personal opinion. Okay, so one of these was missing the O-ring, and it was definitely this one here, because the Lowe's O-ring is just a tad bit fatter than the OEM O-rings. I guess in the factory they just forgot to put one on this particular fitting, but I mean that happens from time to time. And again, pack of 10 O-rings was like $2 and change. So if you have these like compression fittings or G1/4 fittings in general and you need O-rings, well, these I think will work just fine. That being said, we'll go ahead and let's start building this system. We'll need to get, we'll install the water block on the CPU, and I'll install the hard drive and SSD, get the cables installed, and then we'll build our water cooling loop in here. Okay, everybody, so I'm going to start hooking up some cables. I'm going to take this side panel off here. Kind of surprised this thing doesn't have thumb screws. Really am surprised. I'm just going to come to the conclusion that this is a cheap case. It's a cheap end case. I mean, we ran into the issue with the clearance for the radiator on the inside earlier in the previous video, and I mean, it's just, I mean, it is, I guess it's not a bad bottom mount PSU case. It's got lots of ventilation, but boy, is it kind of cheap end. Anyway, put in perspective, the case that the Cucur Matara Lux is in, I paid $30 for it back in May 2007. That case came with thumb screws. It's like, come on. So we have access to where the back plate is for the CPU cooler, for the most part. They can't always get it right because every motherboard's got to be a little different. They can't put everything exactly the same freaking spot. So we have enough room to be able to get in here and tidy stuff up. Now I'm going to actually pause on installing the hard drive and the solid state drive in here, because the pump is going to be mounted above those, and if there's going to be a leak, I'd rather show before I install the drives. I don't want coolant leaking all over a brand new SSD or a hard drive. That just wouldn't be too good. So let's go ahead and try to get some stuff plugged in here, and we can deal with the tidying up a little bit later on. Well, at least they were nice enough to give you options for your audio header. They could use, you could use it with a modern board with HD audio, or an old board with AC97. So AC97 was common up through like 2004, 2005, that time period. Like on AMD boards, it was pretty typical for stuff up to like socket 939 to have AC97, and of course AM2 to present to have the HD audio. And say some Intel 775 would have AC97, and newer 775 would have HD. Slightly different pinout. Of course, you know, they can't just change the codec, they gotta change a few other things in the process. I think part of it was because HD audio provided port sensing on the front. And on AC97, if you didn't plug in a couple of jumpers, or you didn't plug in your header, your actual sound on the back of the motherboard would not work. Okay, trying to remember where all the connections are on this board. Been a minute. I'll say this, this case would work very well with an Asus motherboard. Got the 3 spacing power LED header there. Now if I'm not mistaken, I think it was typical back in the old days for power LEDs to have spacing of 3 rather than spacing of 2 on the little connector. But this motherboard offers a separate power LED hookup for those special few cases that have, you know, the Asus friendly style connector. The rest of the front panel connections are going right over here. Man, I tell you what, guys, this case is a disappointment. So, you know, you got these 2 big areas of 120mm fans, but yet you can't because, well, over here the RAM modules are in the way. And over here the CPU power connection's in the way. It's like, how did this case get past testing? Is my question. How in the world did this chassis get past testing? I mean, these 2 areas up here fans are just useless. You can't mount a radiator up there. You can't mount fans up there when you have all this stuff. My buddy who built this thing years ago, he just happened to get lucky by choosing this fan here, this Arctic F12, which just so happened to clear. It just so happened to clear the RAM, but not on this board. So I'm telling you guys, I am so disappointed in this case. It's, yeah, not impressed at all. Really not impressed. So I guess what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mount this fan here on the bottom, or one of these others, don't matter, I guess. I kind of like this one though because it has a grill on it, and it's also got built-in PWM control, so we can plug it right into there's a chassis fan header that's 4-pin up here we can plug this right into. So we'll stick this in the bottom of the case, and we'll just have to figure it out with fans. I mean, this is pathetic. I mean, what was the purpose? I mean, the holes make good ventilation, but obviously you can't put fans in there. I mean, maybe unless you can find some really thin fans, but it's like, come on. Put this thing on the side, I'm gonna bolt that fan in. And I guess while I have it on its side, I'll go ahead and install the CPU block. Okay, so I got more cables in there, and everything's kind of thrown in there for the moment because I still got to put in the liquid cooling system and route the tubing. And once I get all that done, I'll have to figure out how to get these cables routed a little better. It's kind of a rat's nest right now. So I'm going to actually start on the liquid cooling part of this. So I should mention what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the pump on a spare 2.5 to 3.5 inch drive bay adapter. It's going to mount this kind of where it sticks out a little bit, and I can mount the pump on top of that, and that way the pump will stick out just a little bit where you can at least fill it and things like that. So I'm going to actually do the plumbing part off camera because that's going to actually take a little bit of time, but I will resume this video once I get done with that. Okay, so I got this thing plumbed together, and I know some of y'all are going to probably call it a ghetto water cooling setup. I'm just going to be honest with you, on an old system like this, it's going to be done on a budget. So that does mean zip ties in place of official hose clamps, if you want to call it that. Now the zip ties, they actually work pretty well when you use them in this case because I use 1/2 inch PEX fittings. So these fittings are actually intended for 1/2 inch PEX line. So you really have to squeeze that tubing out. The vinyl tubing, you have to take the needle nose pliers in there and open up the tubing just a little bit, and it's definitely a chore getting the tubing on there. But once you get on there, it's on there good and tight, and then the zip ties act as additional security. So what I do is when I tighten down the zip tie, I take the famous needle nose pliers and I pull. This is with the rest of the zip tie still in there. I pull and twist, and it really helps tighten down and lock it tight. So I mean, these things are on there good and tight for sure. And you can see the CPU block up there. It's got, of course, the compression fittings on it. So again, these are plastic PEX fittings. It's funny, I didn't know they made these in plastic, but I mean, you think about PEX is plastic, so I would use the brass ones on my system, on my plumbing. And matter of fact, I have actually plumbed PEX before and used these things, the metal ones. But I think these are actually good for inside the system because I don't want the metal touching up against like the graphics card or motherboard or something and causing a short. So I have these inside, and I think a pack of 5 of these was like $5 or something like that at Lowe's. And of course I bought the tubing at Lowe's as well. So we can say that about half of this system is put together with Lowe's parts. So out the back, same deal. Up here I actually have metal PEX fittings. I had some of these laying in my drawer. So I use these up here. Got compression fittings going into the radiator. Radiator is not the greatest. As you can see, it's like a miniature version of what's on the Q-Cube Tower Lux. So really, to be honest, I'm setting this system up to be not so much for overclockability, but just for me to be able to cool this CPU without sounding out like a leaf blower, so to say. Got the pump, of course, stuck right here, and getting ready to fill this thing up. I did the blow test. I took a piece of tubing, shoved it in there, and got a good seal, and blew in and tried to suck down to pull a vacuum, and I didn't hear any hissing or anything like that on any of these fittings. So we're going to go ahead and fill her up, and we're going to use the Q-Cure Plexi as a power source. We're not going to actually run this thing. We're just going to run we're going to use the Plexi to power the pump. So let me get the camera set up and we'll go ahead and begin filling this thing up. The only concern I have is the pump and res are down pretty low compared to the rest of this system, so we're going to see how this goes. I would have liked to have put it up higher somewhere, but of course, I mean, the only option would have been able to The only option would have been to put it outside like I do on the Mid-Tower Deluxe. I'll get me a piece of tubing here. Okay, since I could not find my funnel, I decided to do a little hack here. So the cap on this reservoir happens to be a G1/4 fitting. So I just threaded on one of my extra barb fittings and made this little contraption here. Use this to fill her up. Still have to be careful though, trying to spill anything, but let's give it a shot. Alright, so let me look for any leaks. Alright, so I'm going to pulse the pump a little bit, try to get some of that stuff moving. Because you don't want to run the pump dry, so you got to be careful about that. So I think the way this is set up, I could actually refill this a little bit. Give me a little more reserve. So we can see the pump does work. Alright. Still lots of air bubbles in there, but progress is progress. Alright, let's put some more in there. I want this to be enough coolant. I do have some more 50/50 out in the shed, and some distilled water too, if needed. Okay, so that actually filled it up. So we'll leave it plugged in and let it run. Check for leaks all around. I'll say that pump is very quiet. Try to work any extra air bubbles out of there. Okay. Yeah, so the reservoir is pretty much up to the top. There's a little bit of air space in there. All right, so I'll go ahead and take loose my contraption here, and we'll go ahead and install the cap. And what's nice about this is, let's say you end up putting this pump in an area that's hard to get to. I mean, you can see the reservoir, but you can't actually get easy access to this top. You could actually install a barred fitting on here and run some extra tubes somewhere in your system and make yourself a fill port. So that's something to keep in mind if you're using this little pump here, is you could install a G 1/4 fitting right on there. Tell you what, guys, I'm so tempted to just go ahead and start this thing up, but we need to let it run for a while just to make sure that we don't have any water leaks. Safety first. So this pump is extremely quiet. Hardly makes any noise at all. And from the looks of it, it's moving a good bit of coolant. I think this little pump here could easily handle the Mid-Tower Deluxe. I mean, Mid-Tower Deluxe does have a bigger radiator. Yeah, definitely. It didn't take too much to fill this one up. It would have taken more if we had a real radiator. But yeah, we're going to let this thing run for a bit. I'm going to get some paper towels and stuff a paper towel like up under the CPU water block. Set a paper towel up under here. That way we can just watch and make sure we don't spring any leaks. Give you a close look at everything. And of course, all this stuff here is the combination of super glue and baking soda I added to the side of this thing at the joint just to make sure that it was a good tight bond. And this was the side. This was the side where I had too much, of course. But the rest of it looks okay. You can see a little bubble passing through every once in a while as it still bleeds air out. I can see the coolant level has gone down just a tad in this little reservoir. Yeah, one concern was this block here, because when I took this block out of service back in early 2018 or late 2017 when I did the Mid-Tower Lux upgrade, I disassembled it to clean it out, and it wasn't too awful bad in there. You still see some air bubbles working their way out. The pump is really quiet. I can feel a slight vibration in the case because, I mean, I guess it is touching up against the case a little bit, but of course this foam down here does help dampen out the vibration. I'm just giving this thing a couple of little good rattles, try to help work out any air bubbles. Tell you what, guys, if this ain't water cooling system on a budget, I don't know what is. So I'll be leaving the plexi on for a good while, so it's been running non-stop for at least since the beginning of December. I tend to leave my systems on, aside from Mid-Tower Lux, I tend to leave my systems on more often during the cooler months of the year. Yeah, so we'll give this thing a little bit of time and check for leaks. Okay, everybody, so I've let this thing run overnight and it's running just fine. No leaks that I can see on any of the fittings or the block or the radiator. So it looks like we're good to go. We'll go ahead and get these cables tidy up some and get our SSD and hard drive installed. This thing is ready to go. Okay, so it's running. I've got all the cables hooked into place and tried the best I could to get things tidied up, but this case, like I said, this case is a real disappointment in my opinion, to an extent. So, turns out this is actually a Thermaltake case. The fan in the front was a Thermaltake branded fan. But apparently my buddy, when he bought this case, he must have bought some Rosewool fans and this F12 fan that's in the bottom. So the F12 fan is in the bottom. It's actually pushing air down. I just didn't really like the idea of having an intake fan sucking air right off the floor, right where dust wants to collect. This, in my opinion, didn't really sound like a good idea. So we got this radiator fan pulling air out. We got this fan here pulling air out. And I'm going to have the case fan, the side panel fan on the side, pushing in air like this. So we should definitely get plenty of cooling. So you can see this thing, according to the motherboard, the CPU is sitting right at 30°C, which is pretty impressive. Motherboard temperature's coming up. It's about 67 degrees Fahrenheit in the room. So there's your temps in Fahrenheit just as a reference. But yeah, overall, not too loud. I may go in and tweak the fan curves a little bit to quieten this fan down just a tad. It's currently the loudest fan on there, which really ain't that loud right now, but yeah, guys, that first startup is always interesting. I must say, always interesting. So that being said, let's go ahead and I gotta use this keyboard because it's not detecting the other one. So the target fan speed. This thing's a little weird about how you adjust the fan curve. But let's give it a shot here. So you briefly heard full spin for a second there. And this motherboard always takes its sweet time with power on self-test. Reminds me of a motherboard I had about 14 years ago. It was a Celio P4 X400 Dragon Ultra Phenom 4 motherboard. That might be the video card fan I'm hearing. Yep, that's what I'm hearing. Alright, so that won't be quite as noticeable with the side panel on the case, but yeah, so we'll go back. Let's see if this, yeah, that's just working now. Good. You can see it's coming up just a little bit, but come back here, and I do feel the air coming out the back of this thing feels a little warmer than, of course, the ambient air. You see the hoses feel just a touch warm. It's still cooler than body temperature according to that, so yeah, just a touch warm. Let's make a nice space heater, guys. Once we get in there and start doing stuff with it, get that CPU working, we make a dang nice space heater, warm this room up real nicely. So yeah, now I'm going to go ahead and install Windows on both of these machines. This one, and of course we can't forget about that one. That one actually has Windows 11 on it right now. This one currently has nothing on it right now. So you gotta put something on it. I'm actually kind of tempted to just throw Windows 11 on there just for fun. And depending on where a machine goes, if I end up giving it to a friend or somebody, I may put Windows 10 back on it or whatever. If it's someone really close, I might say we can put Windows 11 on it, but I'll have to service it once a year to install that feature update every year. Because of course this machine here, this space here with the 16 gigs of RAM and the FX 8120 CPU, of course does not meet the Microsoft Elite Class Meal System requirements for Windows 11. So yeah, I feel this air starting to get a little warm back here. So it's definitely not the greatest radiator, but I mean it's doing its job. This CPU normally with that air cooler, with the fan at a low speed, it would definitely be well up into the 40s, probably close to 50. I'm gonna say probably in the mid 40s, assuming the ambient temperature we have right now in here. That being said, I'm going to throw the side panel on this thing, and we'll get Windows installed. So you can see right here, I've actually got the pump plugged into the power fan header because that's one that is not affected by the CPU or chassis fan smart curve or smart fan curve. That way we can run the pump at full speed and we can monitor its RPM, and you can see it's turning close to 2300 RPMs with that mixture of antifreeze and water in there. The antifreeze and water is a little thicker than this water. I noticed this with the SC600 on the Meteor Deluxe. Back in the day when I had the premium chill coolant, when I went from that premium chill coolant to the 25-75 mixture of antifreeze to distilled, the pump actually did slow down just a touch on RPMs, but I mean that system's running that coolant for 4 years now and no issues at all. So hopefully we'll have the same here. And the idea is maybe in the future we'll upgrade this system to something newer. I don't know. Who knows? Depending on what I do with this thing. Okay, everybody. So if you look carefully at this thing, you notice anything different? Yeah, the power supply. So I put this thing together and I went to install Windows on it, and it was just very unstable. It would lock up in the installer, and I mean it was just bizarre. It would lock up during post. It would act super unstable all around. And I was thinking, okay, maybe this FX CPU could be on its last leg, because I mean for many years I had it overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz. But I don't know for sure. So here's the thing. I changed out the CPU for an Athlon 2 245E. Matter of fact, there was a CPU that I pulled off the Plexi a while back, and same deal, it was unstable. And we're talking about a 45 watt TDP processor going down from a 125 watt TDP processor, and it was still acting unstable. Crazy. I tried different CPU, I tried different RAM configuration, I tried the 6750 graphics card from the other system. Same thing. Very unstable. So I changed out the power supply. I put in this unit, which actually came out of the silver one, this Corsair CX450, I was able to get in there pretty decently and get the cables somewhat organized. I mean, it's still kind of a rat's nest when you think about it, but it's in there, and once I changed out the power supply, it started running perfectly fine. So I ended up swapping back in the FX8120 processor, and it's now running. Now, it still needs to install drivers and things. I actually did load Windows 11 on there just for fun. So we got Windows 11 just clean installed, haven't done anything with it. But, yeah, crazy to think a power supply. I mean, looking inside it, I don't see any failed capacitors, so I'm not really sure what's going on with this unit. Voltages look, I mean, according to the motherboard's readouts, the voltages look great. So that's kind of bizarre. Not really sure what was going on there, but yeah, this power supply could be a no-go. Probably won't really waste my time with it. Maybe I'll try a recap and maybe I'll get it going okay. I mean, the caps that are in there, they look okay. They ain't bulging, but they are questionable brands like FCON and brands like that. So there's a possibility that maybe those caps are bad. And capacitors, electrolytic caps can fail without bulging. So when the caps fail, it can cause instability and all sorts of other mess. So I was like, certainly this motherboard ain't bad. I mean, this motherboard, now to be honest, the motherboard, I did notice it completed posts a whole lot faster with the Phenom II CPU, and that's because I believe this motherboard was, of course, this motherboard was intended for socket AM3 processors, and they just happened to, ASRock happened to, I guess, make it work with the first gen FX processors. I mean, that's pretty much all I've ever run in this thing was the FX processors, with the exception of dropping in a Phenom II 965 on the very first boot up to flash the BIOS to install the FX chip. But yeah, it's running okay. Coolant temp is pretty low. Now, another thing is the barbs on this pump and res combo, they're just not the greatest. When I was changing out the CPU, of course, had the water block pulled off, and of course, because of that, I was having to move things around a little bit, and I noticed a little bit of seepage under the return line where it meets the pump. So I ended up moving the spring clamp back a little bit, added a couple zip ties past the neck of the barb, and also added a couple of zip ties between this PEX fitting and the barb to squeeze that tube down to make sure it seals. We'll see how it goes. We'll let this thing run for a good while. I mean, it ran overnight and didn't have any issues, so I think it was me working inside the system that caused that. But honestly, the barbs on this pump, I think, were intended for 5/16 tubing, and I'm using 3/8. I mean, I'm not real sure what everybody there uses, but I think 3/8 is a more common tube size. Who knows? I mean, now the holes in this case, you can see I had to take out one of the snap outs because the 3/8 was just a tad bit too big, so probably a 5/16 tube would have worked, but I would have had to have bought different fittings for the block as well as different fittings for the radiator. So, I mean, that's why I went with 3/8. I mean, that's what I've used in the past, is 3/8. So honestly, I think it would have been nice had sys cooling included, instead of these barbs, which are known to break according to reviews. Instead, they should have included just threads, like G1/4 threads, where you can install your own barbs or compression fittings for whatever tubing size you want to use with it. So that's kind of a little negative about this pump. So I mean, otherwise, I mean, the two negatives about the little pump are, of course, those barbs and the sometimes questionable seal between the clear plastic and the black plastic. I mean, that thing, I mean, it hasn't leaked, so, I mean, but then again, it's brand new, so time will tell. But we now finally have this thing together, and I tell you, what a day it's been. Spending all afternoon working on this thing. Matter of fact, I've been working on this thing mostly since about 11 o'clock this morning, getting this thing figured out, but it looks like we've got it figured out. We're just got to finish installing Windows, and there you have it. So, not exactly sure where this system's going to go. I may keep it, or it may go to the next door neighbor. I don't know. If it goes to the neighbor, of course, I'm going to make sure they're aware that it has a cooling system. Well, they'll see it has a water cooling system in it, but make sure they're aware that the coolant is basically glycol, ethylene glycol. So, have to keep that in mind. But yeah, you can see it's up and running now. Here's a desktop, which don't have any drivers yet, but there you have it. So guys, it really figures. I had just shot that clip of video showing the system running with that FX8120 CPU, and lo and behold, as soon as I stop the camera and I go to move the mouse, the blasted thing freaking blue screens. Still having issues with stability. Honestly, I think that CPU is just fried. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I had overclocked this thing pretty hard for several years, and I mean, that's the thing that can happen with these CPUs is you can actually degrade them by overvolting them and overclocking them, and depending on how hard you push them. So I'm thinking that could be the case here. Every CPU that leaves the factory is different in a way. Some of them you can overclock them higher, others you can't overclock them well at all, and some of them will tolerate overclocks longer and better than others. And I think this could have been one of those duds that, with time, ultimately got unstable. So, I currently have a Phenom II 6-core CPU ordered and on the way for this system. The Phenom II 6-core is a CPU I never actually had messed with hands-on, and I think it'd be pretty cool to get to mess with. It's the Thuban core, or I think it's a Leo platform, what I was reading online. Should be a drop-in install for this motherboard. I mean, obviously the motherboard advertises that it's Phenom II 6-core ready. And also, you may see in that little clip there where I mentioned about, of course, go figure, now that I've got this system built, I realize that there is a threaded version of this pump available. Instead of these plastic barbs, it has G1/4 threads, where you can install better fittings that are the proper size for whatever you are using for your tubing. So, for example, I mean, have not had any more issues with seepage or leakage on this thing. I mean, it's been sitting here in the closet for several days now, and all the other fittings are fine. So, I want to talk about the subject of zip ties, wrap up this video. So, I know some of y'all out there probably cringe at the idea of using zip ties to tighten down hoses on fittings. Well, I mean, the thing is, and I actually looked, before I shot this video, I actually did a little Google search and read some forum posts and see what people thought about it. There are people who are like, yeah, I don't like that idea, that scares me. And there's other people who, like me, have been doing this for years. Well, I haven't built a whole lot of water cooling loops over the past few years, but I mean, I got the Mid-Tower Deluxe, for example. That's my own system. It runs all the time, and every fitting on it is zip tied to the to the given whatever fitting. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, I use like these fittings here, like these elbow fittings, for example, are actually intended for half-inch pecs, so they're actually oversized for this tubing. Therefore, this tubing gets a very, very tight fit on these barbs. I mean, normally the pecs, the actual pecs, normally you can just slide the pecs right on with a little no effort, and then you use the clamp or the copper ring to cramp the fittings together. But with the vinyl tubing, as I think I mentioned earlier in the video, I had to take my needle nose pliers, and sometimes I have to warm this tubing up to get it soft in order to slip it on really good. So yeah, once it's on there, it's on there. It's hard to get off, trust me. A few years back, when of course I rebuilt the water cooling loop on the Mid-Tower Deluxe, I had a heck of a time getting those fittings, or getting the tubing off those fittings, because I did reuse my brass PEX fittings. I'll just say again, it was brutal getting the tubing off because they've been on there for so long. But and also, I mean, these are actually nylon or plastic fittings that are in here. I like the idea of using non-conductive materials inside the PC case, and that's another one of the reasons why I didn't use metal like clamp fittings, because obviously we're pretty close to the video card here, and I mean, it's just not a good idea of using metal. My personal opinion, not a good idea to use metal clamps inside of a PC case. You have to consider that this water cooling loop, it ain't like your car's cooling system where it's under serious pressure. Now, when you do run your CPU hot and get the coolant temp up a little bit, yeah, you might actually get a little bit of a positive pressure, but oftentimes, like when I take the cap off on the Mid-Tower Deluxe, you hear a nice little, because there's actually vacuum on the system. So you can draw your own conclusions on that. I call this water cooling on a budget. Based on my own experience, I've had good experience with zip tying stuff together like this. Matter of fact, these right here, I'm not sure if to blame the plastic barb, because they might have been intended for 5/16 tubing when I'm using 3/8, but these metal clamps did not do the job on their own. As you've seen earlier in this video, there was a little bit of seepage right here when I had been working on inside this system, taking the water block loose and things like that, moving this stuff around a little bit. Everything else was fine, but there's a nice little thin trail of coolant, and of course that ethylene glycol, it leaves a little track. If you have it will definitely leave a noticeable track if it leaks. You could definitely see it and feel it. So pretty soon I'll be getting the Phenom II 6-core. I think it's a 1045T, something like that. Unfortunately, it's not a black edition. I wasn't going to spend a whole bunch of money. I got this CPU for like $30. So it's on the way, and it'll be here soon. And I'll get to drop that in here and see if this thing will run stable. Hopefully that's all it is. I'm beginning to really think it was a CPU. Now that power supply that was in here, that Dynex 520 watt power supply, I've used that power supply before on the Black Macs and it worked fine. So a little bit of a weird one, to be honest. But anyways, I noticed I did not shoot a video to wrap up this video, so I figured I'd just go ahead and shoot it right now while I'm editing and give you guys a little bit of an update on this thing. So in my next part, I'm going to focus on that machine there. I just got to put the graphics card back in it because I pulled it out for troubleshooting. So put that graphics card back in, get Windows 10 loaded on this thing, and it should be good to go. And then once I get the CPU, I will do a part 5 on this system, and hopefully the Phenom II 6-core CPU will ultimately fix the instability problems we're having with this thing. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Well everybody, that wraps up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to Computer channel, and be sure to tick the bell, that way you get notified of new video posts. Also, I recommend following Computer Company on Facebook. A link is in the video description. In addition to computer tech videos, I have a second channel, CubeCompMTDX. Links are available at the end of this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching and your support.